Today is Friday, September 12th. We'll bring you the latest on the manhunt for Charlie Kirk's killer and how even his death seems to be dividing the nation. Also, the new Jeffrey Epstein emails uncovered and why one diplomat has lost his job over them. Plus, which one of President Trump's political allies just received a prison sentence? What's in the latest data about to influence the next interest rate decision? And who's leading the pack ahead of this year's Emmy Awards? Those stories and even more news to know coming up. Welcome to The Newsworthy. All the day's news in around 10 minutes. Fast, fair, fun, and on the go. I'm Erica Mandy. Thanks so much for being here. You ready? Let's do this. As of early this morning, authorities are still searching for the person who shot and killed influential right-wing activist Charlie Kirk. But they believe they're getting closer. The FBI and other officials released a new video last night showing the shooting suspect running away from the scene of the crime. They also released enhanced photos and explained that the shooter blended in on the Utah College campus since he appears to be of college age. A high-powered rifle was found in the woods nearby. Authorities also say they're examining DNA that may have been left behind. Thousands of tips have been coming in, the most the FBI has received since the Boston Marathon bombing in 2013, and hundreds of interviews have already been completed. But Utah's Governor Spencer Cox says there's also a lot of misinformation circulating online, and he's asking people not to share it. Vice President J.D. Vance met with Kirk's family and close friends in Utah, and then accompanied Kirk's casket with them aboard his plane. President Trump says he will be going to Kirk's funeral, and he'll be honoring him posthumously with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. It's the nation's highest civilian honor. Charlie Kirk's fans and critics are now debating the legacy he leaves behind. He was a polarizing conservative who often made provocative statements about gender, race, and politics. For example, Kirk was a strong supporter of gun rights and traditional gender roles, and he was a strong opponent of abortion and same-sex marriage. He also believed white people were under threat and called the Civil Rights Act a mistake, just to name some of the more divisive issues he spoke about. So in his death, there have been a lot of raw feelings. And some critics are seemingly blaming Kirk's rhetoric for the shooting that killed him. That's gotten its own kind of backlash, though. For example, MSNBC political analyst Matthew Dowd lost his job after his on-air comments about the killing. Several educators were let go, too. And the Carolina Panthers also fired a member of their communication department over an insensitive post. There's even a website now posting screenshots and social media accounts of people who have made comments that seem to celebrate Kirk's death. At the same time, many of Kirk's supporters are celebrating his life instead, paying tribute to the person who embraced young people and never shied away from sharing his beliefs. The prominent right-wing youth activist organization that Kirk founded, called Turning Point USA, has been in mourning. But for now, it hasn't made any official announcements about its future. In reaction to Kirk's death, politicians and activists are tightening their security. The Pentagon ceremony to commemorate the 9/11 terror attacks was moved to a more secure location so President Trump could deliver a speech. At Yankee Stadium, where Trump attended a game last night, the law enforcement presence was stepped up. And now Trump's team is having broader discussions about how to increase the president's security long term. The U.S. House leadership is also now reviewing Congress members' security, and several Democrats and Republicans have canceled or rescheduled events. Meanwhile, the university where Kirk was shot has canceled classes until Monday. And other college campuses had to go on lockdown yesterday because of security threats. Most of them were at historically black colleges and universities. But at this point, it's believed the threats were all hoaxes, and authorities have not linked any of them to Charlie Kirk's killing. To be continued. NATO is now building up its defenses on its eastern border. It comes in the wake of Russia's drones crossing into Polish airspace earlier this week, and ahead of Russia and Belarus conducting major joint military exercises starting today. Many European leaders believe Russia sent them on purpose to test how NATO would respond. So now they're sending troops, helicopters, artillery, and air defense systems. Poland also restricted its airspace along its eastern borders with Belarus and Ukraine. And Latvia has announced its eastern airspace will be closed for the next week. The UN Security Council is holding an emergency meeting today to talk about the drones in Poland's airspace. The latest inflation and jobs data came out, giving the Federal Reserve a lot to think about ahead of next week's interest rate decision. For starters, prices were up nearly 3% compared with last year. That's the fastest inflation rate since January. Reports say it reflects businesses passing on the higher costs from tariffs to customers. And some of the biggest increases were for essentials like housing and food. But there was also a surge in unemployment filings. Jobless claims rose last week to the highest level since 2021, which is seen as a sign of layoffs when hiring is also slow. So it's a dilemma for the Federal Reserve. Typically, cutting interest rates too quickly risks making inflation permanent, but waiting too long could make unemployment worse. Either way, the Fed is expected to announce its next decision in a few days. More news still coming up, but first, this episode is brought to you by Honeylove. When I think of what to wear to special events, weddings, holiday parties, or even speaking at a conference, it's not just the outfit itself we should be thinking about. What I've realized is that it's what's underneath that can make just as big of a difference. Honeylove's shapewear is designed with targeted compression that gives support where you want it and flexibility where you need it. It means I can slip into a dress and feel polished, confident, and comfortable without constantly adjusting or feeling restricted. And unlike other shapewear I've tried that seriously feels like armor, Honeylove looks beautiful and feels breathable. The fabric is sturdy but flexible, and I like that they considered the design, so I never feel frumpy. I also appreciate that it's made for every body type, celebrating natural shapes instead of just squeezing them away. Treat yourself to the most comfortable shapewear on earth and save 20% off site-wide at honeylove.com/newsworthy. Use our exclusive link to get 20% off, honeylove.com/newsworthy. After you purchase, they'll ask you where you heard about them, so please support our show and tell them we sent you. Experience the new standard in shapewear with Honeylove. Now back to the news. The U.S. Census Bureau put out the largest survey of American life, and it shows quite a few year-over-year changes. For example, there was less income inequality, which is the gap between the highest and lowest earners, and more people had college degrees. Also, fewer people moved as housing costs rose. The U.S. became more diverse, fewer people were married, and so on. The survey went out to 3.5 million households and asked more than 40 questions last year. Of course, things could change a lot this year, too, especially with a new government in charge. So stay tuned. Newly released emails are shedding light on some of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein's relationships, including the one he had with the UK's ambassador to the U.S. Peter Mandelson was fired over those emails, making him one of the most prominent political casualties of the Epstein scandal so far. In one of his emails, Mandelson is talking about Epstein's first conviction for soliciting sex from a minor. He wrote, quote, "I think the world of you and I feel hopeless and furious about what has happened." And then Mandelson gave Epstein advice about his legal troubles. So far, he hasn't commented on the email or his firing, but said having the job was the, quote, "privilege of my life." Now, this could cast a shadow over President Trump's planned state visit to the UK next week, where the two were expected to make some announcements. Brazilian Supreme Court justices convicted former President Jair Bolsonaro. He's the Brazilian right-wing populist leader who's been accused of trying to stage a coup after losing the 2022 election. Well, now Bolsonaro has been found guilty and sentenced to more than 27 years in prison. This defies President Trump's efforts to derail the case. As we've mentioned, Trump leveled 50% tariffs on Brazilian exports because of what he considered to be a witch hunt against the former leader. Now, Brazilian authorities are bracing for even more backlash from the White House. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has already promised to respond, but he hasn't said exactly how, at least not yet. Remember how we told you about artificial intelligence chatbots and other AI apps acting as companions for kids and teens? They've gotten popular for anyone who wants to ask questions, practice skills, or just feel like they have a friend. But they've created a bunch of ethical and privacy concerns. Well, now the Federal Trade Commission, or FTC, is investigating. The FTC issued orders to 7 tech companies like OpenAI, Meta, xAI, Character AI, and more. It says it wants to understand how their AI interfaces could potentially have negative impacts on minors. And it wants to find out what safety steps tech giants have taken. It comes as chatbot companions are at the center of some lawsuits. Already, companies like OpenAI, Meta, and Character AI have announced initiatives to add parental controls and other features. Critics, though, say they don't go far enough. Either way, the FTC says it won't get in the way of the U.S. being a global leader in artificial intelligence. We spoke a lot more about AI companions and kids on the special edition Saturday episode that aired on August 16th. We'll link to that interview in today's episode notes on our website. Well, this is a good time to catch up on all the TV shows you've been meaning to watch. The Emmy Awards are coming up this weekend, celebrating the best television from the last year. Favorites include the comedy series The Studio, starring Seth Rogen, which has 23 nominations, and the drama series Severance, starring Adam Scott, that has 27 nominations. The whole thing will be hosted by comedian Nate Bargatze. You can watch the 77th Emmy Awards this Sunday on CBS or Paramount+. We'll also bring you the highlights on Monday. That's it for the main news today, so now it's time for Feel Good Friday, when we bring you one extra feel-good or positive news story before the weekend. But first, a break to thank our sponsor. As my fall schedule picks up, lunch can easily become an afterthought. Then suddenly, I'm frantically looking in the fridge with just minutes to go until my next meeting, and that never ends well. But Cook Unity has made lunch something I actually look forward to and can feel good about. Working from home, I can just grab a meal from the fridge, heat it up, and in minutes, I'm eating something that tastes like it came from a restaurant. I've had the quinoa-crusted salmon, a Moroccan chickpea and feta bowl, and a Mediterranean grilled shrimp grain bowl. All delicious, fresh, nutritious, and balanced. And get this, Cook Unity's roster includes award-winning chefs, Food Network alums, James Beard winners, the list goes on. And they all handpick their ingredients and create small batch dishes. I appreciate that they're fresh, not frozen. And I get all that without the price tag of daily takeout or time spent shopping, cooking, and cleaning. Just heat, eat, and get back to my day. Fuel your day with the freshest, best-tasting meal delivery made by award-winning chefs. Go to cookunity.com/newsworthyfree or enter the code newsworthyfree before checkout for free premium meals for life. That's free premium meals for life by using the code newsworthyfree or going to cookunity.com/newsworthyfree. Now back to Feel Good Friday. And today we're talking about a 96-year-old man out of North Central Florida who has spent his retirement giving back to his community. It all started more than 30 years ago in his home garden. Bill Brown grew too much produce to eat on his own, so he shared it with his neighbors. Well, since then, that simple act of kindness has grown into a nonprofit called the Children's Table, serving more than 10 counties. Every week, hundreds of families line up for groceries. It's suggested they make a $10 donation, and then they get about $100 to $150 worth of groceries. But either way, no one is ever turned away. Brown's team also runs bus routes into remote areas and makes emergency deliveries when a family calls in desperate need. He says he was inspired by his own experience during the Great Depression when strangers helped his family too. And as he puts it, helping is contagious. Now volunteers who once came for help work alongside him, proving that his message can inspire others to continue his mission even after he's gone. But for now, Brown says he doesn't plan on slowing down anytime soon. Thank you so much for listening today. We'll be back tomorrow with our special edition Saturday episode. Then we'll be back on Monday with the latest news to know. For now, have a great weekend.